Buenos días, señores. Bienvenidos a otra Conversa con Gas. Este es un espacio para que puedan conocer personas interesantes que yo he conocido. Hoy tengo una persona muy especial que quiero presentarles. Voy a cambiar a inglés porque la persona es de Estados Unidos. Y les quiero presentar, I'd like to present you guys to Rodney Abbot. Hi, Rodney. How are you?
Hey, Gaston, good to see you. How you
Good
doing?
to see you. How are you? How have you been?
I've been managing pretty well. You know, this work from home thing has been a big change for everyone.
Yeah, I
But
bet.
and in the creative side, it's a little bit harder because you're not together trying to collaborate on work. It just changes the dynamic. But we've been managing pretty well in the office. So
Cool.
yeah.
So I met Rodney when I was in Avianca, and we did the Avianca rebranding when Avianca and Taka fish merged, and and I got to be in charge of in that whole spectrum of the brand image and new brand work or task force. And I've been we and my team and I worked with Lippincott, where Rodney is a senior partner. And Rodney, first of all, thank you very much for this space. Thank you for being
Sure.
here. And I just wanted you to maybe tell everybody who you are, what do you study, and how do you land a senior partner, a physician in Lippincott?
Okay. Sure. Yeah. Well, so I'm originally from New Zealand, and Lippincott's main office is in New York City. So that's where I am right now. That's where I've been working for many years now. I came over to the United States to go to graduate school in design. So graphic design was my undergraduate training. I worked in New Zealand as a designer, came here to go to graduate school, and ended up working at Lippincott doing identity programs, working on big corporate identity programs.
Okay.
Originally just as a young designer working on the team. And it was work that I found really interesting because it has a very, there's sort of an analytical quality to the work, and then there's also this very creative side. So it's this really lovely kind of balance for me, which kind of suits my personality, I think. Mm-hmm. I started, as I said, working on, sort of a range of programs with IBM and other sort of big global companies. And what I liked at the firm was that the teams were very small. There was just a few people working on big programs. So even early in my career, I felt I could really contribute to the work that was being done.
Yeah.
Getting to meet with the clients and sort of understand what their businesses are all about and really kind of digging into that. And so I ended up just sort of staying within the firm and sort of working my way up to the point where I'm senior partner and creative director. I get to lead sort of lots of big programs now in all sorts of different industries: financial services, energy, transportation, airlines, as we had the experience of working on together. So the variety has been fantastic. That's another thing I really like. I can sort of take something I've learned in one industry and sort of think about how that applies somewhere else. So
that connection is interesting. How you can see one thing and maybe fit into another completely different line of work.
Yeah.
So I'm interested in maybe talking about you're the guys who help people like me when I was in Avianca to really envision and create a new brand identity for the brands that we manage.
Yeah.
So I'd like you to maybe peek a little bit on your brain and maybe have a sneak peek on what the process is on the inside of this process, so we can understand if I have to be maybe an entrepreneur and I want to create a brand, maybe what are the tips that you will give for that person to really create a brand and make it work and make it connect to everything that they want to offer?
Sure. Well, firstly, it was just a fantastic experience getting to work on Avianca, and I'd been lucky enough to work on Taka in El
Yeah.
Salvador before, so it was a great sort of continuation. It's I think one of the key things that we brought to the process of creating the identity, the brand image for Avianca was one, sort of really understanding what's the purpose. Our firm is very based on sort of defining what's the purpose of this company beyond just sort of being in business to make money. There's a sort of a larger sort of sense of the role that this brand plays in the world, and who's the customer that we're really trying to connect with. So there's kind of this idea of I really sort of digging in deep to understand the core personality, the kind of the drive behind the customer that this brand is trying to connect with. So part of the process that we went through with Avianca included going and interviewing these young entrepreneurial people throughout Central and South America to really understand some of the characteristics, because we were creating an image for an airline that was very much based in Colombia, but it wasn't just about Colombia. It was more about an attitude that people have and sort of this really sort of vibrant modern spirit. So we wanted to understand the people who we thought would be sort of that sort of core customer. So really digging into that process to understand, what are the commonalities? How do people think about the world? What sort of drives them? And then what is it about the identity that you want to create that is forward-looking, that feels like fresh and dynamic and new, but what are the attributes of the brand that are really important that we don't walk away from? What's the heritage elements that are really important that we can sort of bring forward? And obviously for Avianca, the symbol through the condor was something that had been abstracted in the previous version before we started working. But it was a very important image that we sort of tried to find a way to bring forward in a more modern gestural way.
How much of that history of a brand would you take into account in the reframing of the new brand image? Because I remember making presentation decks for the board and stuff, and watching, because Avianca is the second oldest airline brand in the world after, I think, Lufthansa, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so there's an evolution on their brand identity. How much did you take that heritage on that the previous brand images that you found into the new brand image that we work with Avianca?
Yeah, it's a good question. We spent a lot of time thinking about there are sort of really important symbols that companies have, and that employees and the public who supports the brand kind of connect with. So we did spend a lot of time trying to understand, what's the role of, in this case, the condor, the symbol. How does that come to life? Color as well. Sort of what's the meaning behind the colors you have today, and how are they used within the system? So all of the visual elements, as well as sort of all of the general attributes about the brand, were things that we looked at and did research on with customers. We went out and we talked to people, we talked to employees, we talked to customers to really understand what is it about the brand, and to get a sense of how, you want to sort of understand how far you can push the brand forward to the point where there's sort of it's a little bit of a reach in some ways.
Edge crafting, right?
Yeah, but it can't be too far that all of a sudden you disconnect. People feel like this isn't the brand that I have grown to know and love, especially a brand that's been around as long as Avianca has, celebrating 100 years, right? So that's tremendous history. You want to try to identify all of the good parts of that and really bring those forward, but reshape them in a way that they feel contemporary and modern, so it doesn't feel like it's stuck in the past, but it really has a very contemporary, fresh look at the world and way of presenting itself.
So first, then, strong research on the customer,
Mm-hmm.
uh, the sense of purpose of the brand. It's really important, right?
Yeah.
And how much is politics? I mean, because you're working in a company where top management has their thinks and thoughts
Yeah.
about everything, right? And their vision about everything. And how do you uh, mix like that vision with your proposal,
Yeah.
and how much politics is involved in the process?
Well, it can get very political
Yeah,
in the process. And the thing you need to watch out for is that you create a way of presenting the work, and you've thought about the work in a way that can take some of the subjective emotional responses out of the equation as much as possible. So really tying what we're doing to the business,
yeah,
understanding what's the drivers of the business, what are we really trying to achieve, because the revised, the refreshed visual identity program is really developed in support of business, hard business objectives, right?
yeah,
We're either trying to grow into new markets, we're trying to reflect something about the expansiveness of the business, or we don't want to lose any of our existing customers. So there's lots of factors. I find that also because you're talking to people who design isn't what they do. And
yeah,
so there can also be a level of discomfort with how will they present the work, especially executives, to their employees.
yeah,
So it's really important that you present the work through a business lens, so that the executives understand it from how it's helping the business, and then you help give them the language to talk about the work in a way that they feel comfortable, like in their words that they can then share with employees. Because what I've found is if an executive can feel comfortable presenting in their words to the employees, they will buy the idea.
yeah.
If they feel any discomfort about how they're going to explain this, then they won't buy the idea. So that's a balance of just really trying to understand where the executives are coming from and the dynamic of the organization to get to that point where.
So how to bring them something that how the storytelling is going to be working for
Right.
them, because they're going to convey that to everybody inside the
Yeah.
company, right?
Yeah.
I remember a point where uh, you guys had like papers in a big table, right?
Yeah.
And thinking about the condor, and thinking about how Avianca connected all the territories where they
Mm-hmm.
fly to, and this traces, right?
Yeah.
And that's how the logo like kind of
Mm-hmm.
evoke. I mean, and the thing is, the level of iteration that you guys had to make to really finish up with the final logo that we have was amazing, because maybe there was one point in a lot of lines, and
Right.
I mean, how many iterations do you had to do to really get the final product, or how many iterations do you have to do when you do a rebranding of this size?
Yeah. Well, it was yeah. I mean, that was a uh, wonderful experience we went through to really trying to figure out how do we connect this notion of the Americas, right? North,
Yeah,
Central, South America, and that sort of gesture of the three sort of leading forward, sort of, so it has a very forward look to the symbol. Was that was an idea that we thought was just really one, interesting, and also true to the vision, right? That was
yeah,
true
sure.
to what the vision of the airline was. We went through. So once you get sort of the idea, the general idea, that refinement of really trying to figure out the best way to bring it to life, like what's the best articulation of it. We could go through. It's not uncommon to go through hundreds of different ways that could uh, show up in the world. And while we're doing that, as we're identifying then maybe the half a dozen that we think, hey, these are pretty interesting approaches. We're then thinking, how does this come to life in things like the airplane? You know, because that is the most visible for an airline. That is the most visible symbol. Is how is this going to show up on a plane, and how what is that going to feel like to people as well? So, you know, applying the identity and thinking through the broader system of elements that support whatever that drawing is, whatever the symbol is, on all of these places, from digital and signage and the aircraft and, you know, so on. Because you need to make the decision, you kind of need to see the whole world. What's this new world going to look like for the brand? Because how things show up in the real world, it's not just the symbol living on its own, it's always in context. So you kind of do need to provide enough of a range of things and sort of paint that picture of what this new world is going to look like in a clear enough way that people can see it and believe in it. So yeah, there's probably hundreds of different drawings that we had that sort of led into that final version. And then I think even in the final presentations that you were in, we had model airplanes made. We had a couple of different approaches. We had model airplanes painted
Renders,
up, renderings done, so you could sort of spin the plane around and really see it from all angles. So yeah, it takes a lot of work to sort of build all of that stuff to help the story.
I remember when we were on the final stages, like we had two runner-ups, right?
Yeah.
And the Avianca experience was really interesting to me as well, because on the inside and the client side, we have like the ex-Taka guys and the ex-Avianca guys, because we were merging two brand identities into just one, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, there were people that wanted this one, people that wanted this other one, and there was a point where, how the hell are we going to define this and this, like, a quote unquote political turmoil inside the company, right? And I recall talking to the commercial VP in Avianca, and maybe we can do some neuromarketing techniques or whatever.
Right.
And we did, and the logo that we have right now, I recall finding that it presented like a puzzle for the customer that engaged their brain into, what is this, and I'm gonna solve it, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the, I mean, it's not the defining aspect that we took that image, but it was interesting because I don't know how much branding decisions were took that into account, and I was like, that's interesting. I mean, and it really, because it's really subjective and it's not likes or dislikes, it's just how your brain operates, and brains don't have biases, right? The attention, the emotion that brand image generated helped, like, in a sense, with all other things that were taken into account, to really define, okay, this is the brand image we're going to use. That was really interesting.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
I was just going to say, I think, what was really interesting there as well is that it made the mark more memorable to people.
Yeah.
Right. The symbol became more memorable because of that engagement and that little sort of figuring it out. There was that sort of moment of discovering what the symbol represented, and that then made it sort of stick in a way that became, and that's what you're looking to create, is something that is very memorable and iconic for people and that they engage with. So yeah, that was a very interesting study, and we did see that there was a lot of just real attention put into what this mark was, and it was a very positive kind of thing. People,
But I was doing my homework before talking to you, and see what other things have Lippincott did. and I'm really into airlines. I mean, it's been 8 years and a half of my career on
Mhm.
that industry. And the other branding work you've done was the Southwest branding.
Mhm.
And I haven't realized that, and that you guys did that in 2015. I mean, it's like 2 years after the Bianca
Right.
work we did. Uh, how was that process? Because coming, uh, shifting from the airplane to a heart,
Yeah.
uh, I mean, that's a big shift in terms of branding, right? Because uh, can you tell me a little
Yeah.
bit of that process? I'm curious.
Sure. Yeah. And I think like you, I love the airline industry
Yeah.
as well, and have been lucky to work on a number of different programs. And Southwest was also very close to me in terms of like the meaning and just a wonderful experience. The heart, well, I guess you have to start with understanding that what really defines Southwest is the culture of Southwest and the people of Southwest. It's a very, it was founded on this belief that, you know, if you treat employees really well, they will treat customers well.
Yeah.
So it has a very tightly knit sense of community within that company. And so the heart had always been a symbol that was associated with the brand. They'd used the heart in many different ways
They
over the
use
years.
it on their badges, right? Or
They had it on badges, yeah, with the wings. You
yeah.
would see it sometimes inside the plane. They had all sorts of different ways that the heart would show up. So it did have a, it's to that first point you made about, you know, when you sort of look back, how much do you bring forward from the history?
Yeah.
And that was a symbol was very important. But the problem with a heart is it's probably one of the most generic, in a sense, symbols that are out there. Like people are going to watch this video, and hopefully a lot of people are going to, you know, click the heart and like the video. So it shows up everywhere. So how do you make it distinctive for the brand? And for this case specifically, how do we make it a Southwest heart, not like every other heart that's out there? And again, through the research we went through, talking to employees and doing a lot of customer research, flyers and non-flyers of the airline, the thing, people couldn't really describe what the symbol was, but they remembered the color. And if you're familiar at all with Southwest planes, they use color. They're
Yeah.
not like a white plane with
No,
color on the tail.
yeah.
It's all color. Blue planes, big sort of blue planes with stripes of color on the tail. And so people could recall exactly the sequence of colors. They could tell you about, oh, it's a blue, red, and yellow airline, you know, in terms of the colors on the tail. So when it was sort of like the switch went off for me when I realized if we put the stripes of color into the heart, we can bring that iconic use of color from the plane and make it very personal. You know, on the plane, it's very big sort of gesture, but if we could make it more intimate and personal, then that reflects that connection that the people of the airline have with their customers and with each other. It's a very, you know, it's a very sort of one-to-one thing, right? So it became this, you know, essentially like the idea of it could work as a pin that you would wear,
Yeah.
but it can also work big on a plane. And that was the success in terms of that.
Because you have them
in
the aircraft belly as well,
yeah,
right?
yeah. That was really there was just, we sort of realized that this moment of really making the brand is a very human brand.
Yeah.
But the plane is the biggest symbol that people see. Could we make the plane have this kind of sense of humanity? So literally putting the heart between the wings, like on the, you know, on the belly of the plane, became sort of the symbolic gesture. And it's not, I mean, it's quite unusual, right? I mean, normally you would put the symbol big where customers can see it on the outside,
right? Yeah.
like on the side of the plane somewhere. Here, the largest heart that's on the plane is on the belly of the plane, where really the only people that get to see it are if you happen to see it flying over when it's coming into land or taking off, or you're an employee like working on the ground crew.
Already, yeah.
You're one of the crew, right? So the heart on the big heart on the belly of the plane is more for the employees.
Wow.
as a reminder for them of like why they're here, you know, the sort of the qualities that they bring to their work that makes them distinctive within the industry. And then there's the heart by the door. As passengers enter, there's a small heart right next to the door, so you can see that. And that's just a reminder when you get up close, you know, because what was interesting with this program was it's not just we developed a symbol and then we started to place it on things. It was what role does the symbol play and how do we use it became more important. You know, we wanted it to be very intimate.
I want to show you. I found an article where this is what you're talking about. I mean, the heart and the and you coming from this to this. I was like, wow. I mean, it's bold, right? Because and that's this what you're saying. I mean, the heart and the belly. And I thought, hey, nice. When you watch maybe an airplane land and you see the heart, you can connect. But then after you tell me that it was made more for the employees. Talks about as well as the culture of Southwest, where they think a lot of their employees and empower them to do a lot of things and make the brand alive with all the things that they do on customer service, right?
Yeah.
So
I mean, they're a low-cost airline, but the service and the personality is huge, like larger than life, in a sense. So trying to sort of capture that was really important. And I think, you know, part of what we were trying to do through that program was also, you know, Southwest. If you weren't somebody who had experienced Southwest from the outside, it could look like it was just different. It didn't do things the way other airlines do things. It's open seating where everyone else has assigned seating. The boarding process is very different. There are so many things about the airline which are different, and so it could be for some people a little polarizing because they didn't necessarily see it as being an airline that felt professional, quality enough that I want to fly on it. So part of the rebranding effort was also to really attract these new customers who were sort of on the fence a little bit, could be open to flying Southwest. They needed a reason to take another look at it at Southwest, and they needed to see it's operationally, it's an exceptionally well-run business. And I think sort of presenting the brand in a way that lived up to that quality of the business. So not just the personality, but also the execution that the airline brings to everything they do, and making it feel more polished and refined and just crisper in terms of, you know, how it shows up in the world was really important, because it felt a little quirky, and it looked a little quirky before. You know, it didn't feel like it was that well coordinated. Every channel you looked at was presented in a very different way. The brand didn't feel cohesive across every sort of experience that a customer would have.
Another question that pops into, I know how much time we worked for the Avianca rebranding. It was like a 3-year program in terms of how is every branding program you're involved that long, or what's the average time in terms of working from start to finish?
They can vary. It depends a little bit on the situation. I mean, it's not uncommon when we're working with a company like a spin-off or a merger where there is a hard deadline. We need to have a new name and a new identity created, the definition of the brand created on a specific date. And that may be, you know, we may only have 3 months to sort of to get from start to finish. With airlines, particularly, just the lead time to get things done and implemented, they just take a lot longer. I mean, it's not like an overnight thing that you can just start painting planes. So
because you have to like park them, and that's really costly, right?
Costly, right? Yeah. So you're trying to work it into the schedule of like when the plane is coming off for some major maintenance. That's an opportunity when you can paint it. So I think for for Southwest, their original timeline was something like 6 or 7 years to convert the fleet to the new identity.
Wow, that's a lot.
I think because of things that have just happened just over the last year with COVID and other things that have impacted the business, obviously that timing has changed. They're probably being much slower in terms of like repainting aircraft, because so many aircraft are now have gone offline, and it's an expense to paint a plane. But that's part of the process, is understanding how do you make that conversion. Also in their case, just as business as usual, they wanted it to be a zero added cost to the business to change. So some airlines may decide we really want to change, or any businesses may decide we want to change very rapidly. We want to put a big signal in the market that we have changed, or we may identify specific markets that we want to, for example, if you're in financial services, you might want these, in these cities, we want to put new signs up on the branches so that our customers can see it, because that'll get most visibility for us. And then we can sort of gradually roll out over time the rest. So
you've worked as well in financial services, right? In Central America?
Yeah, with Backcryptomatic in Costa Rica. Yeah, updating the visual identity. So that was another interesting one where they had a lion as the symbol.
Yeah.
Used it for many years, and the challenge there was how do we bring that forward in a way that shows more on the digital leadership of the bank. They were really shifting much more into digital first tools, more innovative. So the identity needed to feel less traditional and feel more contemporary in terms of its presentation. So that was another great experience. Very different industry, but in many ways lots of the same issues that we were dealing with at Avianca as well.
Yeah, that's interesting. Rodney, I'd like to close this chat with maybe you giving us maybe 3 tips. I'm putting you in the hot seat right now. So to everybody who is thinking about rebranding or creating a brand, and I think those 2 scenarios are quite different. But what tips would you give based on your experience in terms of having a great brand for their company or business?
Sure. I think first thing is know and identify really clearly who are you doing this work for.
Okay.
Is it for the employees to send some signal, or is it to customers? And if so, exactly what customers are we really trying to talk to in a new way? Be very clear. Second, I would say be very clear on the criteria that you're going to use to evaluate the work that you're doing and to measure the success of the work at the end. And be very consistent on coming back to that criteria again and again, like always restating, okay, this is the purpose of this is what we're trying to achieve, this is how I know if the work is good or not. And then I think the third one would be prepared that this is going to be a long and complicated process.
Yeah.
And don't lose focus because of that. Keep coming back to the same, why you're doing it, for who are you doing this work, and why are we doing this work, so that you can sort of just maintain that the stamina that's needed to get through the process. Because it will be up and down. You will get detractors, you'll get people who won't like the decisions that you've made, you'll get some people who will love it. If you feel really confident that you have a clear vision for why you're doing it, that will help you get through that process.
Okay,
so hopefully,
cool.
hopefully that helps.
Well, Rodney, thank you very much for having the time to give me and to be able to chat, to catch up. I hope everything in New York and with you and your family in this COVID pandemic is okay.
Thank
you. Please send my regards to Richard and Steve if you see them, because I'd like to maybe catch up with them and tell them about this, and maybe they'll do a little chat with Gaston next time.
Of course, I'm sure they'd love to. It
All
was
right.
nice to see you again, Gaston.
You too. Take care.
Okay.